Dzień dobry, tu Dominika Koprowska
i Michał Walesiak.
Zapraszamy na Naukowe Radio Białowieża.
Hello everybody. Welcome to Naukowe Radio Białowieża, which is scientific radio of Białowieża. Today's episode is special because it's in English. That's why all the English speakers are finally able to listen to our podcast. The reason today's episode is in English is because it's part of the conference series, which we recorded during Białowieża Ecology Conference in September 2024. And during this conference, we were able to talk with different people presenting their research during the conference. And many of those people were English speakers. So sadly, they were not speaking Polish yet. In previous two episodes, we collected the Polish-speaking guests, so the episodes were in Polish. But today, we've got the first group of English-speaking people. So the formula is that each of those people were invited to our podcast room to talk shortly about their research and about their experience in Białowieża Forest and about the importance of natural forests and their conservation as well. So this is the short introduction, and first in this first episode we will present five guests, two plenary speakers, which is Bart Muys and Lena Gustafsson, and three PhDs and PhD students, which is Jessie Foest, Claudia Massó, and Laura Harms. I'm sorry for any mispronunciation, but fortunately each of our guests will also present themselves. So you will hear the proper pronunciation. So let's begin.
My name is Bart Muys. I'm a professor of forest ecology and management of the University of Leuven, KU Leuven in Belgium. It's in the old city of Leuven, a very old university, and it's very close to Brussels, just 25 kilometers out of Brussels. But south of our cities, we have some nice urban forests, or ancient forests, so forests that have forest continuity. They have always been forests.
Mm-hmm. And what is your area of research? What do you research in the forest?
I have done a lot of things in my career. I like interdisciplinary research, where I also work together with social scientists, but I've mainly focused on large sustainability issues. How do we come to sustainable forest management? And in the recent 10 years, I have been focusing on the role of tree diversity for forest productivity, forest resilience, and forest multifunctionality.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think, like thinking about that you research, for example, for sustainability or tree diversity, what do you think is that we could learn from natural forest system?
Yeah, we can learn a lot from natural forests, and that's the reason why it's very important to have all over Europe and over the world a network of strict reserves or unmanaged forests to have a kind of reference for the managed forests. There we can learn from the natural processes. It's also, of course, a pool of biodiversity, of natural genetic resources. But it's important to understand that the most difficult management technique of all is the zero management, doing nothing. We humans, we always have the necessity to intervene. And there's nothing more difficult than just do nothing and leave it alone. And trust that nature will find its way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's also like the social aspect of natural forests or like maintaining forest is like very important. Thank you. So last question I would like to ask you would be about your Białowieża Forest experience, because you've been in a walk in the strict reserve. So could you share any impressions that you have of this forest?
Białowieża is a very important forest in Europe. It's the only lowland virgin forest that we have. And for me, but also for many other people, it's like a place of pilgrimage. it's a place where you have to have been as a forest ecologist. And not only as a forest ecologist, I would say any naturalist or people that love nature, they should once in their lifetime come to Białowieża. But I've been here 5 times. It's my 5th time I'm here, and it's always a pleasure to be here. It feels like almost a sacred place, a very interesting place. And every time I learn new things about the functioning of the ecosystem.
Thank you very much. So I hope you will enjoy the rest of your Białowieża experience, and thanks a lot for the talk.
A pleasure. Thank you very much.
My name is Lena Gustafsson and I come from Sweden. I'm Professor Emerita, meaning I'm retired professor from Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. It's abbreviated SLU. I still work after retirement, and I'm in Uppsala, and my subject area is conservation biology in forests.
Mm-hmm. What could you develop a bit on the subject, like which aspects of forest?
Throughout my career, I have been very interested in applied science, working closely with forestry and conservation, mostly in Sweden, meaning that I have studied the actions taken by forestry to preserve biodiversity, but also the actions taken by conservation to preserve biodiversity. And for instance, I have studied a lot the importance of small areas, small reserves for biodiversity, and also have been studying something called retention forestry, which is very common today, mostly in clear cutting. It is to leave trees for biodiversity when you harvest, and I have been studying this a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is something that like is now increasingly popular, but I guess like it's like relatively thing that happened within last few decades probably, and not
yes,
before.
it's actually it has been practiced for hundreds of years actually, and because foresters have kept some trees for different reasons, to create really coarse wood, for instance, for shipbuilding, but also since they were having respect towards some trees and wanted to save them, and they are so this. But this word, the term retention forestry, was coined only 13 years ago, so it's new, and this practice of not clear cutting everything, but leaving some trees. It's it's becoming between 30 and 40 years old now since it was introduced large scale. And it's practiced now in North America, in North Europe, Central Europe, Australia, and also actually in South America, in Argentina. They practice in a small part of the country.
Nice. And do you think that like this forestry or like this retention forestry, do you think that is there something to learn from natural forest systems in case of this retention methods or retention strategies?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely essential to have these natural forests as a template, as a model for what we can do in the production forest, because in the natural forests like Białowieża, we see the what is important for biodiversity. For instance, which tree species are most important, the age of the trees. In the production forest, we never have the oldest trees, but we have them in the natural forest, and also the variation in the forest. There are parts with dense forest, and then there are more open light spots, and this is also important. And this we can study in the natural forest, and then we can transfer it to the production forest. It's also about the dead trees. Many species are connected to dead trees, and we have much more dead trees in the natural forest than the production forest. So natural forests are absolutely essential.
Thanks a lot. And partially you already mentioned Białowieża Forest, but in the third question, I wanted to ask you specifically about your impressions, because you are here not for the first time, but you were here before, but you were in a strict reserve walk in one of the mornings, and I wanted just to ask you about your impressions about the area.
I just love walking in Białowieża Forest. It's a unique experience. It's the largest old-growth natural forest in the temperate zone of Europe, and I cannot experience this anywhere else in Europe. So it's totally unique, and also it's a very, very fine, wonderful experience to walk in this. It's a warm September, so the mornings are wonderful. We went out at 6:00 and we walked around the forest, and I can see the type of forest that there is no such forest in Sweden. It's impossible. So it's a great experience. I was also here. I have been here twice before. 20 and 24 years ago. And it's interesting to see that the forest looks the same. It doesn't change very much. I know there have been many dead spruces from the bark beetle, but where we walked there were very few spruces, so I didn't see that. But it's very similar. So it seems, at least for the eye, it's quite stable, these forests. And I also enjoyed walking around the village of Białowieża, because it has there are so many very nice houses, the traditional houses, and I also see much more now small guest houses and small restaurants, cafes, which were fewer 20 years ago. There were not so many, and I'm also impressed by the research that is done here in Białowieża by the Mammal Institute, and so I have enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks a lot for a very detailed answer and appreciation of multiple levels of your Białowieża experience. Thanks
but
a
it
lot.
comes from the heart. It's really.
So thanks once again, and please enjoy the rest of your time in Białowieża.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm Jessie Foest. I am currently a postdoc at AMU in Poznan. And I just finished my PhD in masting, and I'll explain what that is later.
Yeah, that's basically
that's it.
Congratulations for finishing
Oh,
your
thank
PhD.
you.
I also hope to be there one day. So if you could then tell us about, because you had a presentation during the conference, so could you tell about your research and about some main conclusions?
Yeah, of course. So I looked into seed production by beech trees, and beech trees do this really cool thing where they're sometimes producing many seeds, and then they produce next to nothing. And they are thought to do this because that way they can avoid predators, seed predators, and pollination becomes more efficient that way. And I was worried about seed production because from the UK we know that there are more seeds being produced, but seed production is becoming more constant, and that has a lot of
with
effect.
time, because of climate changes or something?
Yeah, so it's more constant over time. So normally it used to be when you walked into the forest, sometimes you would find so many, and other years you would find barely anything. And now they're producing, in the UK, they were producing more seeds like every year. So that variability was going down. And that had effects on how many seeds were eaten by predators and how many seeds were actually viable because of pollination. So I was worried that this happened more widely. So I used many sites across Europe, and I basically looked at how variable seed production was across Europe. And unfortunately, we found that seed production is becoming more constant. So that can affect, again, like how many seeds can actually, germinate and make it into adult trees. So it's a very worrying trend.
And could you maybe shortly explain why getting less variable means more predation? Like what could be the mechanism?
Yeah, so that's starvation effect. So you can imagine that if there's many seeds, then it's a feast. And then if there's suddenly nothing after the year thereafter, then all the species that had, reproduced a lot, became bigger, they starve. And if this ends up for a couple of years until there's a big reproduction, like a seed production event again, then the population will be dampened practically.
Okay, so there are many seeds, but there is sort of nobody yet to eat them.
Yeah.
Oh, those
it's like keeping them on their toes.
Tricky trees.
For sure.
Cool, thank you. So last question that I wanted to ask you is about your impression of the Białowieża and Białowieża Forest. You were there in the strict reserve this morning, so could you tell us a little about your impressions?
Yeah, it was lovely. We were there when the sun came up, and it's just magical. The amount of structures that you see, the diversity of species, it's really, really quite a beautiful place you work in.
Cool. Okay, thanks a lot then, and have fun at the conference.
My name is Claudia Massó, and I'm from Catalonia, close to Barcelona. And but actually now I'm living in Germany because I'm doing my PhD there in the University of Würzburg. And yeah, I've been there for almost 3 years now. And yeah, I'm a biologist, but I've been always working with forest management. So I'm like, I will not call myself a forester, but like a mix between biologist and that.
That's cool, actually, because I think also from today's talk by John Linnell, we've learned that it's actually important that those two things we learn synchronously, let's say. So you are presenting a poster on the conference. Could you tell us what it is about?
Yes, so I'm presenting one of the preliminary results from my project. I'm working with pollinators in the forest. And it's a topic that it's sometimes like not as studied as it should be, because normally when we talk about pollinators, we talk about them in like an agricultural setting. So I'm focused on actually how forest management affects pollinator diversity. And in this poster, I'm presenting how from our project that is called BetaFo, that we are trying to enhance the beta complexity of the forest. So not only the alpha in the alpha scale, but also in the beta, to increase the taxonomic diversity, to make it better actually for like different, how will I say it? Taxa, because like this project is not only for pollinators. Like I'm one of the 9 students of this project, so like yeah, I'm working with pollinators. But like for example, another Patrick that is also here in the conference is doing satellite data. And other people is doing plants, other people is doing like seed dispersal. So it's a really complex study. But in my case, we are focusing on pollinators.
And because alpha and beta diversity, you mean that you're trying to increase the spatial heterogeneity of the forest management, yes? And so maybe quickly about your results, like what is the effect of this spatial heterogeneity on pollinators?
Yes, or the project have, so our experimental have like 2 different kinds of, well actually 4, but we categorize it in 2. That is, so like the open canopy nest, doing it in a more natural setting. Well, I'm not sure if I can call it natural or not, but like it's like creating either big gaps or like more distributed gaps. So it's divided in these 2 categories. So
you mean during the cutting of trees, during getting timber?
Yeah, so for getting timber, like one of the management, it will be to like cut trees in a distributed way or like in an aggregated way. So like opening a big gap or like
many small
random trees.
Yeah.
And then also it goes like from less deadwood left in the plot to more deadwood left in the plot. So like, yeah, there's different treatments with like open aggregated canopies with less deadwood, or like open canopies with like more deadwood, and like assess like which one will actually be better for like these taxa. And my results show that for the taxonomic diversity, the pollinators, in this case I'm talking about hoverflies, they like way more the aggregated setting of cutting than the distributed, because like it also affects the microclimate, like the light availability, like it's warmer in these spots. So like in the forest, like this is really important that you have like some gaps like this. And for the functional diversity, I didn't like put it in the poster, but like I can give you like maybe a spoiler.
Okay, go on.
But like for the functional diversity is more important actually the deadwood than the open gaps.
Okay.
So because in the larval stage they usually like need more deadwood and like stuff like this.
So it seems that hoverflies prefer the larger gaps because it's more insulation, for example, but for the different types or functions of the hoverflies, they actually need different deadwood and lots of deadwood. Okay. Awesome, that's really cool. I'm curious also to hear in the future about more groups, like to see like this whole picture of taxonomic groups. Thanks. And my last question would be that today you had a walk in Białowieża Forest.
Yes.
So I just wanted to... It's your first time, as far as I know.
It's my first time here and my first time in Poland in general.
Okay, great, welcome. And could you quickly describe your impressions, like what was there, like maybe something surprised you or maybe actually not much? Or
I mean, it was I was never before in like a strict reserved area, and this was quite shocking because I've never experienced like the feeling of like being in like in a, I don't know, like exclusive area of forest, you know. But honestly, if you show me 2 pictures of like old forest, like a mature forest, or like a picture of the strict reserve, I'm not sure if I will be able to tell the difference. So for me it was like a really nice experience, because the feeling of being like in a strict place that not so many people can access was like really great, and it was fantastic. Like the forest is like really great, but me personally, I've been around in a lot of forests around the world, and I'm not sure if I will be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, sure thing. I think actually also that I'm kind of, the more difference I see, the more time I spend here, so it's I think it's obvious that on the surface, like we have also many beautiful old forests in Europe. So,
I mean, maybe I was too amazed to pay attention to the small details, maybe that like I will not be able to see in other forests, but like but in general it was a really great experience, and I'm really happy I came to the conference here to be able to see that.
Cool. We're also happy to have you here, and thanks a lot for this quick talk.
Oh, thank you to you.
I'm Laura Harms. I work at the Forest Research Institute of Baden-Wuerttemberg. It's located in southwest of Germany, very close to the Black Forest, and I am working on my PhD at the University of Freiburg. Yes, and the broad topic is about how disturbances or disturbance events in mixed mountain forests affect biodiversity, especially insects.
Mm-hmm. So you had a presentation during the conference. Could you tell us about what you have presented?
I presented the first results of one study we did in the Black Forest, where we compared two sites. Some sites were our reference sites. They were just ordinary managed forest sites. Mm-hmm. So they're mostly spruce-dominated forests. And then we compared these to disturbed forest sites where the dead wood has been retained. So they were affected by bark beetle outbreak, and then we retained the dead wood, and we
so you didn't clean the area, it was completely retained.
Yeah, mm-hmm. No salvage logging, or which is the usual practice, but in these areas it was not. Mm-hmm. And we brought out light traps to catch moths that are active during the night, and compared which species we caught on each of the sites, mm-hmm. and how it differed. And we actually saw some differences in the assemblage of the moth community. So the species richness, the alpha diversity, was significantly higher on the disturbed sites compared to the regularly managed sites. And we could also see what was driving these dynamics a bit more on the mm-hmm. Communities, and so on the disturbed sites, plant species richness is also it's an important driver, and we also investigated if it had an effect on red-listed species of moths. Okay. There we didn't see any difference on the treatment, but what was more important determinator of occurrence of the red-listed species was soil moisture, which is a bit of a, it is also something that is very much related to microclimate. So it's a proxy for microclimate. So mm-hmm. apparently the microclimate is more important for red-listed moths.
Right. Okay, cool. So it's very interesting because you show that the bark beetle disturbance, which is often like people associated with a very negative effect or like a catastrophe or something, but actually at least for some moth species, it can have also
have some positive effect. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. That's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And thank you. And last question that I wanted to ask you would be about Białowieża Forest experience, because you're here for the first time, but you've been to a strict reserve walk. So could you tell us about any impressions that you have about the area?
Yeah, it was very impressive, especially in the morning. It was very beautiful. Although I was a bit disappointed that I didn't see bison. But apart from that, it was very beautiful. And to me, I think one of the most surprising things was how much it was different on such a small scale, that you could see differences in forest assemblage. And I think what I was also very not used to seeing a lack of beech, because it's so common, like in deciduous forests in Germany, you will always see beech, and it was a very different experience to not see any beech. It was actually very nice, very beautiful, very special.
Cool. Yeah, but hornbeam actually is a bit looking like
it's
beech.
a bit looking like it, but it was like, when you look closely, it's hornbeam, and it looks different, and beech forests are often very, there's not a lot happening in terms of ground vegetation. So I think that's the main difference that you see. I was surprised at the amount of ground vegetation that you could see, because I was expecting something more dark. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot for your answers, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Dziękujemy za wysłuchanie podcastu Naukowe Radio Białowieża. Nagrywanie jest możliwe dzięki Ministerstwu Nauki i Szkolnictwa Wyższego w ramach konkursu Społeczna Odpowiedzialność Nauki. Do widzenia.